All right, welcome to another live episode of geekoutdoors.com. I just want to first say that this particular episode, it's going to be a lot about privacy. And so if that's something that you don't want to listen to, then check out other episodes after that. And then secondly, we're going to be talking about how the Linux Foundation is growing again. Okay, so first I want to thank Gaza. Thank you so much for joining. Gaza, wow, you're actually early or early in US time, but you're in the UK. So let's go ahead and get into this because this is something that, I think that a lot of people expect it to happen, and maybe it already has been happening. And the second part of this whole privacy episode is primarily about the EU's new implementation of GDPR requirements, and so this is all tied together. Okay, so if you haven't seen in the article, there was a recent article how Amazon Alexa, their smart device, was actually listening to a private conversation to a couple in Portland. And what it did was it took that private conversation and then it sent it to her husband's one of their employees in Seattle. And so when the employee got this message, told them to basically that your Alexa has been hacked and you need to unplug it. And so Alexa or Amazon came back and said this wasn't because of a hack. It was because during that whole private conversation that there were actually words in there that told Alexa to send this message, okay, and record and send the message. Now, this is something that is extremely creepy and also concerning. And this is something that has always been a concern for, I would say, a lot of people who actually use these devices. But it's something that I know that these companies were very aware of, okay, because there are not only a lot of legal issues that can occur. I mean, obviously, these companies, they sell these devices. They're collecting a lot of data all around the world. They could get sued and go out of business, okay? So there's a legal issue first and foremost. But the second thing is, it's the whole thing of trust, okay? Because at the end of the day, the only way you could really keep customers and people behind the scenes using your products and services, you need to have that trust. And this is going to be, something that is ongoing because these smart devices, they are becoming an everyday part of our life, okay? And our smartphones are, in my opinion, probably the worst offenders when it comes to, like listening in, collecting your data. They are probably the worst. I mean, if you have to think about it objectively, okay? But let's look at other places that this whole trend of smart devices are growing. And so also Google Home speakers, which is a competing smart device, has also outsold Amazon's Echo line for the last quarter. And so it is growing. And if I remember correctly, the Amazon Alexa is 40 million plus devices right now, okay? And then if you actually look at other areas, okay, in other places besides just these home smart devices, think about stuff that you use every single day. If you go to, at least here in the United States, you go to a website like Best Buy, their whole smart home area is growing, and it's steadily growing. And at some point, it's going to be exponential growth, Everything's from people that are familiar with thermostats to locks, likes. There's absolutely everything that these smart devices, i.e. devices with artificial intelligence, from basic to more advanced, they're all built in. And so all of these require definitely some data collection for sure, okay? And then also other things like refrigerators, like these Samsung, I guess you could call them smart refrigerators, which has a built-in Wi-Fi connectivity, and also it has apps built in and Wi-Fi capability. And it's not just refrigerators, it's also your microwaves, your garage door, your homes, your cars. It's pretty much everywhere, okay? And this is something like, man, if you have to think about it two ways, okay? I really think that whenever people hear things like this, they either, most of the time, they go on two extremes, okay? It's either the one case, this is way too much data being collected. It is a huge, privacy violation. And then you have the other extreme where it's like, this is good, you know, it's going to allow us to better serve our customers. In terms of governments, it's going to allow us to, you know, keep tabs on how our government's running. And so it could go to two extremes. I'm the type of person who's kind of in the middle. You know, I take a very practical approach to a lot of things. Okay, and so when it comes to privacy, my practical approach is, if it's private to you, don't put it on the internet. Okay, that's, to me, that's a very simple thing. However, in our whole world of technologies, with all this many separate devices, many different governments, many different privacy rules, that's where it's not simple. Because even though we as an individual, you can control what you put out on the internet, you don't control what governments are collecting, and especially what businesses are collecting. Okay, you don't really have much control over that at all. And that's where it gets really complex. And that's where I'm going to get into this whole GDPR regulation, okay? Because this is something that's going to have far-reaching effects, okay? So this is put out by the EU, the European Commission, where this was something that was agreed upon, I think, in 2016. And so if you have been checking your emails, you've probably been getting a ton of emails concerning GDPR, okay, and how this is going to affect not only businesses, but also, in my opinion, the user as well, in terms of their user experience. Okay, now I myself, I do not know whether these rules also apply to governments, because that's really a big thing. Because if all these businesses that do work with the governments, they have to comply to these rules, do governments also have to comply as well? Okay, so that's the thing that I don't know yet. I haven't read through all these details, but it's based upon the EU's new privacy laws. And let me go look at the chat real quick. Okay, so hi Gaza, good morning Gaza. Gaza saying an example of 1984 and 2018. Yep. And hey, good morning, Rose. Thank you for joining. Hi, Geek and everyone. Hi, Gaza, looking at spyware. Good morning, Carlos. Thank you for joining. Hi, all. Gaza saying this proof that these devices are not passively listening, but actively listen, and due to natural language processing still being worked on in progress, these mistakes will always happen. Yeah, Gaza, you're right. I mean, before I get into the whole GDPR thing, just one thing, since Gaza didn't mention that, I'm glad he mentioned that, is that these devices, just like our smartphones, they're constantly listening, okay? Because they're listening for the whole command, like if you said, okay Google, or hey Alexa, or hey Siri, or Cortana, whatever. So it's always listening, and so it's always recording something, okay? So that's probably something I don't think most of the general public understand. It's always listening all the time, okay? And it's always recording things. It's whatever it does with it afterward, that's really where it sets things in motion. But just remember that any of these devices, they're listening all the time. Obviously, there are ways that you could set that to turn it off, but I don't know. I just assume that it's listening even when I turn it off. That's kind of where my mindset is, and so that kind of sucks, but that's where it is. Okay, so going back to what Gaza was saying about it listening all the time. Well, these are, this article is saying these are some ways that you could protect yourself from eavesdropping. Turn up the volume of your Alexa device. I'm assuming that's because you could hear if Alexa is saying something. Say no to contacts. Turn it off. No voice purchases. Don't drop in, and taking baby steps. I mean, all of these things, I don't know. I think it becomes common sense. You know, if you are really concerned about privacy with these smart devices, at least right now, just don't buy them. You know, that's really it. I mean, just don't buy them. But at some point, much like our smartphones, and what I just mentioned here, refrigerators, microwaves, all these smart homes, at some point you can't avoid it. It's unavoidable. I mean, even your lights. I mean, they're smart lights. It's kind of crazy, you know. And so let's go ahead and get to the GDPR stuff. Now, I myself, I don't think I'm compliant with this yet, because on my website, for the EU compliance, I had to have this down here. This is for cookies, and so I have to share information that data is being collected on this website. you know, whether it's through analytics, whether it's through anything, you know, just cookies in general. I have to do that legally. Otherwise, the EU can shut down my website. And so I have done that for a long time now. Since I am on the internet, I kind of have to make sure that I am as compliant as much as possible. But then whenever these things come out, it takes time. Okay, and that's just my very simple website. I haven't even gone over the more complex things yet. Okay, so whenever this whole GDPR thing came out, there has already been some controversy with it right away. And so there was a lawsuit filed recently for $8.8 billion from a person who is from Austria. Yeah, Max Creams. Yeah, and basically this person is saying they are not doing enough, and that these companies are, you know, still unprepared, or just basically Google and Facebook aren't doing enough. But I don't think this is going to go very far because, you know, it's Google and Facebook and many other companies. It's not just them. Because the thing is, with this new GDPR reform, there's heavy penalties if companies do not abide by these new rules. I mean, it could take like into the billions and billions of dollars. It's a percentage. They could take a percentage of whatever revenues you make and fines. Okay, and so this is a big thing. And so in one case, I would say it's good that the EU is doing this. They've always been pretty strong, I would say, in terms of the privacy stuff. But in the end, I don't know how much difference that really makes. Okay, I don't live in the EU, so I don't really know what the experience is like over there in terms of the internet and privacy. Okay, but on the second hand, how does this actually affect the users? Okay, so this is really what I want to talk about, because whenever we talk about privacy, I really feel, as I stated earlier, it's normally always two extremes. It's one case like, I don't want any of my data collected, this is wrong, that part. Okay, that's one. Okay, but then you have the other extreme, like we need all the data as much as possible. You know, whether it's business or government, it doesn't matter. We need as much data as possible. Okay, so I try to look at it from the standpoint of a user first and foremost, because obviously I use this stuff every single day. And then secondly, from a creator, because obviously I have stuff on the internet, right? And I also, my business, what I do for work, it's on the internet. And so I kind of see it from both perspectives. Okay, so this is how this has recently affected the user experience. Okay, so this here is talking about how some websites, US websites, they are now currently blocked in the EU. Such sites like Los Angeles Times, New York Daily News, Chicago Tribune. So these sites are not currently prepared for these new GDPR requirements. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of companies and a lot of websites that are going to be affected by this, not just these big companies. And some people are saying over 60 to 80% are not ready. And I'm one of them, because this stuff it takes time. Okay. Now, the thing is, let me show you what the user experience is going to be like if you have to strictly follow these rules. And this particular article refers to NPR, okay? And so they have two different versions. If you agree to these new GDPR rules, then you'll get the normal experience that you would get, you know, before these rules. Okay, so it looks like a normal website, right? But if you decide that you do not agree to this, right, and you could go, you'll get like a text-only version. And let me click on the text-only version. I'll show you how that looks like. Here is the NPR text-only version. As you can see, that is probably not a good experience. That looks like something from the early 1990s. Okay, so the reason I want to show you this is because this shows you the extreme effects of the rules. Okay, where you're so the extreme where you want to be extremely private, you don't want anything shared. Well, this is the type of experience you're going to get. That's pretty much it. In order for them to comply with these new rules, not to get sued, expect this type of experience. That's the extreme. Okay, and then obviously on the other end, on the other extreme, well, let's take Facebook, Google, Apple, all of them, Microsoft. They collect tons and tons of data. And I myself I don't have a problem with data collection because I know that it's necessary. You know, it's necessary for everything. Hospitals collect data. Your car collects data. Your computer collects data. You know, all those things are needed in order for it to understand what to do. But my whole stance is it's not really the data that's being collected. It's what they do with the data. Okay. And that is, I think, in my opinion, I think that's the whole point of this rule. Okay. So that's the good part of it. I understand in general what they're trying to do. They're trying to give people a better control of their data. And at the same time, you know, try to, I guess, police some of the ones that are not using the data in a proper way. Okay, now whether or not this is going to make huge changes, I think it already has, but only to a certain point. Because let's be real, man, these companies, these governments, I mean, they are not stupid. Okay, I mean, they're gonna, whatever rules come out, they're gonna adapt. And this has been there long before we've had the internet. Okay, so for most people experiences, it should be the same. Okay, and so very much like what I've done on my site, you know, this makes me, I guess, compliant, at least from the old EU rules, but I haven't really had to change much, you know, at least not yet. So I haven't put in the whole GDPR stuff yet, but it might change some things that I do. Okay, and so let's go here back to the comments real quick. So guys are saying use a Faraday cage, but then that would defeat the point of having one. Yeah. Yeah. So Rose is saying that's right, Geek. Don't buy them, especially Google Home, Echo, and Apple One. Yeah. And you know, Rose, I just mentioned it earlier. We kind of already have one because of our smartphones. I don't have the Google Assistant or Google Home on, but I know it's listening. You know, unfortunately, I know it's listening. But yeah, Rose, I would agree with you 100%. If you are concerned about that, just don't buy the devices, okay? For as long as you can. I think it's really simple. Just don't buy it. Guys saying, my son bought me one as a present. It's still in a box. Hey, Gaza, what you could do is you could actually make a unboxing video and then, you know, post it up on YouTube. You could make some money off of it. That's my thing. I always try to think like, well, I mean, how can I turn this into a positive? Okay, let me go ahead and make money off of this. And so, yeah. So, Gaza saying GDPR is long overdue, but it's going to take a while to implement. Yeah, Gaza, it is. It's a very complex thing, you know. I mean, there's so many different areas that you can't account for everything, you know. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's going to take a while. And then even if, you know, there are companies or websites that are violated, I mean, are these governments, the EU institutions, are they going to spend a lot of money to try to track them down? Probably not. You know, I think they're only going to go towards the much bigger companies or bigger institutions or groups that violate this, you know, because it wouldn't be worth the people paying taxes and all their money to go after everyone. Okay. And so, Rose is saying, I try to keep my appliances manual. For example, my body mix is manual versus other blender manufacturers. We have tons of electronic controls. My crock pot is manual also, and so forth. Yeah, Rose, I do the same thing. And you know, I like this discussion because I think instead of being knee-jerk, whether it's privacy-centric or on the other end where we want all your data, this is like real-world practical stuff. That's why whenever you see my videos, and I just mentioned this a little bit earlier, I'm a practical type of guy. You know, I like the KISS principle, which is keep it simple, stupid. And so things like what Rose is saying, Gaza's mentioned, yeah, it's like really simple stuff, you know. You don't have to spend too much time, you know, complex wise, you know, unless it's something like, you know, you have stuff on the internet, then okay, then I have to spend more time on that. But like for everyday real world stuff, yeah, just do those things, you know. And so Gaza's saying, unlike the US, we Europeans don't live in a police state, so we value our privacy and we defend it. Most of the privacy encroachments are by US companies. Very interesting, Gaza. Yeah, I've never lived in the EU, so I definitely would not understand. Gaza saying, I would rather have the extreme experience. I'm only interested in the information, not the user experience. Yeah, Gaza, I think for the majority of people, they probably prefer the experience. I don't think a lot of people want to go back to this. I mean, I know I don't. That's not the type of experience that I want, okay? But I get what you're saying. Rose saying, sounds right, Geek. It's what these companies and countries are using the data for. If it's not to improve their features and find fault, that's okay. But if used for other things, then it's not okay. Yeah, Rose, that's always been my whole stance. You know, I understand the importance of collecting data, but it's how they use it that's really very complex, a very gray area. But at the end of the day, you as a consumer, you have a choice in a lot of, you know, what you use every single day. And so, you know, controlling your personal data, as I mentioned, that is primarily up to you, whether what you put on the internet, but there's all the other stuff surrounding that you can't control. And that, I think that's always going to be an ongoing thing, you know, because our data is on so many places. Even if you decided to leave civilization and move to an island somewhere, and I have mentioned this before, they still have your data somewhere on some servers. The government has your data. They have your, you know, in the US, they have your social security number and your credit history, right? And so all these governments have information on you anyway. And so even if you were to move to a desolate island somewhere, your information is still on there somewhere, on their servers somewhere, you know? And so, yeah, so with all of this news, I go back to what I myself, Rose and Gaza, we're just discussing here. For all the things that you can control, very simple common sense approach, you know, just do by that, you know, and then other things that come along, you know, just kind of deal with it as it comes, you know, because we live in a very complex world now in terms of all this stuff, and there's not a simple solution to it. And so I would say, you know, not to drive yourself crazy, just deal with it as it comes, and then do what you can if you are concerned about your privacy. You know, just do what you can. Like I said, simple things. Don't buy it. Don't use it. You know, just be cognizant of where you are sharing your data, and that's it. You know, and I will probably say the same things over and over on any upcoming episode. So that is my whole thoughts on first the Amazon Alexa. I just said Amazon, and then also how that relates strongly to what's going on with the EU's new GDPR regulations. Okay, and so let's go ahead and get to the second bit of news, and that is the Linux Foundation. It's growing again, and so it seems like the Linux Foundation has been in the news a lot lately, and I think that's a good thing. I really do. Okay, so the Linux Foundation, they just added 22 more silver members and 4 associate members. And the Linux Foundation is doing a lot of stuff, man, and I'm very happy about that. And not everybody agrees with how the Linux Foundation is being run, because primarily, if you actually look at the members, 99.999% of them is all these big companies, which most people in the whole Linux world, I guess diehard Linux users, open source proponents, do not like these companies. I mean, come on. I mean, these are the companies that most people in the open source community hate, you know, but at the same time, these are the companies who are actually the main supporters, the main ones putting money in to the Linux Foundation so that they could fund all these amazing open source projects that we have. And so it's kind of like, it's kind of funny, you know, how the biggest open source foundation is also the one that has the most proprietary closed source companies as well. But that's the reality. Okay, that is the reality. You need money in order to do stuff, and you can't do that if you only have people who don't have money. And so the ones that have the most money are these big companies. Okay, so that's something that I have mentioned many times before. But let's go ahead and get to the positives of it. And the positive is we'll be able to get more stuff in the open source world. Okay, so here are some of the projects that the Linux Foundation has been working on, and I have talked about some of these in previous episodes. Automotive Grade Linux, Cloud Native Computing Foundation, Hyperledger, LF Networking, Open HPC, Real-Time Linux, Total Group, and Zephyr. Now, the one that I thought was most interesting was the Automotive Grade Linux, and also Open AI as well, because those things will have a huge impact. I think especially the AI part, because that will affect everybody, okay, in the future. And so whenever I see these projects from the Linux Foundation, I see two things. First, I see progress. Okay, I see progress because every one of these projects that they're working on, I would say nearly all of them, they're all tailored towards the open source community. Okay, in the end, this will benefit the open source community. So whenever these things are ready to go, we as users, we can use this ourselves, okay, and create other things with it. So I think that trumps everything, and that's the best thing out of it. And the second thing is, let's just remember, and I do mention this many times, but I just want people to be aware that all these big companies, despite the fact that I think the majority of them, they do have good intentions, they're going to have a large influence. Okay, let's just be real. They will have an influence on these projects in the end, because all of these projects in the end will also be used by these companies to run their businesses, or for governments in general. Okay, and so Gaza is saying the Linux Foundation behaves like an open source union. Wow, Gaza, that is great. That's probably the best. Yeah, that's the best analogy I've heard before. That's exactly right. And so whenever it is a union like that, with unions, there's always positives and negatives. Okay, but yeah, that's a really, really good analogy. I like that. Okay, and so I am definitely looking forward with all these projects that are coming out, and I do hope that the Linux Foundation continues to get more members, continues to get more support, so that we can get some more cool stuff in the open source community. So let's go ahead and get into other stuff that's outside of the subjects that I talked about today. So today I talked about Amazon Alexa and recording and sending your information. I talked at length about the new EU's GDPR going into effect. And finally, just want to talk about the Linux Foundation growing again with more members, and it will continue to grow. So on this side of the whole episode, I'm going to talk about other geeky stuff. Okay, so anybody who's on here right now, feel free to jump in on any of this stuff. This is just geeky stuff. Okay, and most of the times I primarily stick to movies and video games. Okay, and speaking of video games, Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon just came out. This is awesome. I did a live video review of it a little bit earlier in the week, and on my other gaming channel I am doing a long playthrough of each level from level 1 all the way to level 5. I'm doing one for each level, and then I'll also do additional episodes whenever I pass the game, and I do additional gameplays or try out different parts of the stages. And so if you're not familiar with Bloodstained is, Curse of the Moon, if you're not a gamer, you probably heard of a series called Castlevania by Konami. And basically Konami has moved on to pachinko machines and horrible games. Okay, that's kind of what they moved to. And so Koji Igarashi, who was the original producer of Castlevania Symphony of the Night on the PlayStation and many other games after that, him and NT Creates, primarily NT Creates is the one who developed this game, and this is truly the successor to Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse on Nintendo. And so if you have not played this game, I highly recommend that you go get it on Steam. It's only $10, and it's already gotten like crazy good reviews. Unfortunately, it is only available on I'm sorry, it's only available on the Windows platform when it comes to Steam. Okay, so right there, Windows XP 7.8, 8.1, and 10. But you can play this game in a number of ways. You could do what I did. I have Windows 10 in a virtual machine, and it played just fine, excellent. And so, and you could get Windows for free. Just download it, okay, and put it in a virtual machine. And then, obviously, if you already have a Steam account, just buy Bloodstained and then play it in the virtual machine. It works just fine. And so, if you saw my my video that I did this week, that was off of my virtual machine, Windows 10, and I didn't have any problems. Everything worked perfectly. And so, I highly recommend that. If you are a fan of Castlevania, you have to play this game, Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon. And I really want this game to be successful so that the developers get more money to create more games in this series. And I know Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night will be coming out later, but I would love to see a continuation of Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon 8-bit to many other versions, okay? And so, let me see. Castlevania, excellent game. Yes, Gaza, it's awesome. Gaza saying you lost me with Windows. I'm a purist. I'm sorry, Gaza. The game is not available I don't have a PlayStation 4. I don't have Xbox One. I don't have a Nintendo Switch, and so or 3DS or Vita. So the only way I could play it was through Steam, and unfortunately, it's not available on Linux yet. And so Rose is saying Windows XP still has a market share of 5%, bigger than Linux, even Linux Mint. Wink, wink. Rose, why'd you have to say that? That's horrible. Now I'm kind of depressed. Carlos Enrique is saying, waiting for Bless Online launch. I love MMORPG. Oh yeah, Carlos. I don't play too many games, too many modern games, but there's really some good games coming out. Let me see. I thought I think I heard of that game before. My brother, he plays a lot of games, or when he has time. And this is all for Linux. I can't remember. There was a really cool MMO part. Anyway, MMO on there as well. Anyway, I can't find it. But yeah, so in terms of the whole gaming on Linux and Steam, it is still growing, and I'm happy that's the case. Obviously, we don't get the newest games, but there's still games being produced, and there continually are games being produced because obviously people are buying them. And so, thank you for all these developers for actually taking the risks to develop for the Linux desktop platform, and also for all the people who actually pay and purchase these games to help support these developers, okay, and to bring more games online. And so yeah, so this is great to see, man. I would not have expected, I've been using Linux as a desktop for more than 10 years now, and I never thought that this would be possible. Okay, the only ways I was able to play games, real games, I would say, on Linux before was to use Wine. Okay, now you could use Wine, play on Linux, but more and more as the whole library of games is growing on Steam for Linux, I don't need to do that much anymore, which is sweet. Okay, and so Gaza saying, Rose, Windows has 100% market share of virus and Trojans. Not quite, Gaza. I would say Android gets a piece of that. Apple's Mac OS gets a piece of that. So yeah, not yet. Linux has a few, so not 100%. Pretty close though. Rose said, I heard that Apple is trying to stop using Steam on Apple phones. Yeah, Rose, I think the Steam app, if I remember correctly, Apple denied that. Let me see. That's a good bit of news. Apple denies Steam app. I think that's what it was. Steam app. Okay, there it is. Yeah. So you're right, Rose. Apple rejects Valve's Steam Link game streaming over business conflicts. Okay. And so this is a very interesting thing, Rose, because we have talked about this before, right? Where it's about the ecosystem. Okay, that's why Amazon stopped selling like the Google Home and stopped selling the Nest on the Amazon store. And Apple, obviously, they want it to be the entire Apple ecosystem, and Apple is getting heavily into the streaming game, first with music. Now they're starting to make a push in movies, and obviously they want games in there as well. You could play games through their Apple TV. So guess what? I mean, what Apple is doing is they don't want their competitors in there, and I think Microsoft Windows kind of tried to do something similar, but not exactly, because with their Microsoft Windows Store, a while back when they were trying to compete with Steam, but obviously they failed. And so, yeah, so here, I'm not sure, I'm not sure how it's going to affect users right now, because if you are an Apple Mac user, you don't go to an Apple Mac to game. That's just a reality, okay? I would say, in my opinion, people who use a Linux desktop have more options for gaming than people on an Apple Mac. And I know some of these games definitely have a Mac version as well. I get that, but I don't know many people who actually play games purely on an Apple Mac, okay? I would say more people play games on a Linux desktop than they do an Apple Mac, okay? And so this news right now, I don't know. It's not a good thing. I don't think it is, but I understand why they're doing it. They want to keep competitors out of their ecosystem, because you remember Apple tried to, get rid of Google Maps as well, and then they tried to use their own maps, open maps, and that failed miserably. And then they even tried to switch their search engines from Google to Bing, and that failed miserably as well. And so even though Apple has a ton of money, they still haven't really expanded beyond their devices. Okay, I mean, obviously they have a lot of services that they offer as well, but that's all dependent upon the user getting their devices and getting to their ecosystem. So a good thing, Rose. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me see. Carlos is saying, yes, Tomb Raider, The Witcher, and other nice games in Linux now. Whoa, The Witcher is on there? I didn't know that. Okay, that's sweet. Okay. Yeah, more games. Keep coming. So hopefully the Bloodlines Curse of the Moon, it is really successful so that they could also port it over to Linux as well. So then I don't have to play it in a Windows 10 in a virtual machine. Gaza saying, Rose, yes, it's because Steam doesn't allow in-game purchases. Yeah, if you remember when Apple, they put in some new rules where you can't purchase things directly through the app, or otherwise they will charge an additional fee. I think an additional 30% fee. So what a lot of companies were doing was, if there was a buy button or something like that, they would link it outside of the app so they could get around Apple's rules, okay? So that they wouldn't have to pay Apple the additional tax to actually give them a cut of that money. Yeah, and Guys is saying which Apple can't tax. Yep, that's right. Rose is saying Apple will fail. I'm waiting for getting a Purisan phone, or perhaps to try to convert my Android phone to Linux phone. How's your Linux phone working for you, Geek? Oh, Rose, the Linux phone, I haven't really done much with it, Rose. That's why I didn't do a follow-up review, because honestly, even if I put like Google services and stuff on it, at this point, I don't think I'm ready to move over completely. That's why I haven't done an upcoming review. But I will say the Lineage phone, Lineage OS is awesome. Okay, it's definitely an alternative if you want more control over what happens on your phone, just like your Linux desktop. Even though it is Android based, it's still the best thing. Okay, and the whole Linux phone thing, pure Linux, that's going to take a while. And I think the Lineage OS is the best thing out there right now, period. And so if you are a user of a smartphone and you want it, specifically an Android phone, and you want it an alternative to the normal Android, I highly recommend you try out Lineage OS. Okay, I do have a video that shows how I actually installed that on my old Motorola G phone. I'll try to leave a card up there somewhere if you actually want to check it out. Okay, and Rose, yeah, Apple will fail. I don't think that's gonna happen for a while, Rose. Not for a while. Guys saying go get those ROMs off P-Babe Retro Game Nirvana, LOL. Guys say Lineage is all I use. It's excellent. Yeah, Gaza. And Rose, Gaza, and everybody else who actually, I have mentioned this before, but for people who are brand new to this channel, most of the people who come to my channel are Linux users. Obviously I have many other type of users come in. I'm a channel for geeks, okay? So I don't discriminate. If you're a geek, come to this channel. Okay, maybe that is discrimination. I really love geeks coming to this channel, but the majority of geeks who come here are Linux geeks, at least for now. So a lot of people leave me a lot of great ideas. Okay, like for example, the Lineage OS. I would have never really used that if the people here didn't mention it. Okay, or other distros. I don't distro hop. Okay, but I did take a quick look at MX Linux mainly because of people like Rose and Gaza and so forth for mentioning it. So I think the people who come here, they know way more about Linux than I do. Okay, but then there's also other geeks who come here that knows way more about different subjects, and so I really always find it interesting, and also I learn a lot from having all of you on here. So if you are a geek, you have some geeky thoughts and ideas, please share them. I'd be more than happy to actually talk about those topics that are interesting. So let me get into the other topic that is kind of controversial in a lot of ways, and that's solo. Okay, I have done a video on this where I talked about Cobra Kai versus Star Wars, but I also talked about solo as well. And on my other channel, I have a Go Movies channel as well. I go into more depth on how I feel, but basically I'm kind of tired of Star Wars, mainly because of the new management with Kathleen Kennedy, and so I didn't bother watching Star Wars solo at all. Hey Lance, good morning, thanks for joining. And so if you actually look at some of the recent news articles about Solo, it's not good. And obviously, the media, depending on where you get your source, they would try to spin it, okay? And you could probably see here earlier ones like Solo blast to record $14.1 million preview night on Thursday. But then when you look at the reality, it looks like, you know, this would be a very low Memorial Day opening weekend, probably making 114 million to maybe 125, 130 million, which isn't bad for most movies. But for a Star Wars franchise, that's horrible, okay? And I really, in some cases, I am happy about that, and in another case, I'm sad about that, okay? And so, Star Wars, the original Star Wars, episodes 4 through 6. I hate saying episodes 4 through 6, but those are my favorite movies of all time. I love them till today. They're the best. Period. Okay. I haven't really been a fan of Star Wars since after that. I did not like episodes 1 through 3. And in terms of Star Wars, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, I had fun watching them. Rogue One, fun watching them. But those are movies I would not revisit, and they don't even hold a candle next to the original series. Okay, so basically I was kind of tired of watching Star Wars, especially after Kathleen Kennedy and crew. I just think they pretty much destroyed a lot of what Star Wars is about. And so that's the bad side of it, okay? It's kind of the sad part of it, you know. I'm happy that this movie is not doing well because it hopefully will send a message to Disney, who owns Lucasfilm, that maybe Kathleen Kennedy and her team is not the best people to actually lead Lucasfilm, okay? And so obviously, anybody who is employed by Lucasfilm and all the many people who worked on Star Wars, I definitely don't want them to go broke or get fired. But at the same time, this is really I would say the responsibility and fault of the people managing Lucasfilm right now. So I would say this is a good thing, because it shows a message. Whenever you create a story and characters that are not compelling versus something like a Cobra Kai, which did all of those things right, then this is what you're going to get. Okay, you're going to get this instead of something that should have been 150, 170 million, maybe even 200 million over a long 4-day Memorial weekend. That's what should have happened. Okay, and the sad part is, if this continues going this way, okay, with the whole Star Wars franchise, that's the sad part. It's going to, you know, make people not want to come back to Star Wars. It's going to make people think about Star Wars in a bad light, and that would suck, because Star Wars, the original series, George Lucas, that changed so many people's lives. You know, I think it's more than just a piece of entertainment. I love Star Wars. I was absolutely inspired by it. I still am to this day. I love everything about Star Wars. I can't think of too many bad things when it comes to the original series. My favorite is Star Wars The Last Jedi. I love the Ewoks, you know? And whenever I see movies like this, or even episode 1 through 3, episodes 1 through 3, the difference between that one and the new Star Wars series, okay, is that episodes 1 through 3, they were just bad movies, period. That's my opinion. Jar Jar Binks, they're just bad movies. But these new Star Wars, they're just bad in a completely different way. And I've not seen a franchise like this. Star Wars is the most valuable franchise, or it was. Now that Marvel, still Disney, is just destroying it, because they're doing what you should do. In this case, you should give the fans what they want. Okay, and this is something that the current Star Wars is not doing. They're actually insulting the fans, you know. And I could go on a long rant on this, but it gets into the whole other things, right? But in terms of a business, in terms of how you treat people, you should not insult the people who are, you know, giving you money, you know. And that's the thing that I really do not like about what's going on with Star Wars right now. And if you actually go to Rotten Tomatoes, okay, and Rotten Tomatoes isn't the de facto standard, okay. For me, if I want to know what people are thinking about, I go to YouTube. You know, I really don't go here as my main thing. But it's also nice to see that in some cases the actual audience agree with what the majority of people are thinking. And even if you look at IMDb, or if you look at, like, you know, the Google like scores, but normally people go to IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, you know, they are thinking the same thing. They're not happy with what's happening with the whole Star Wars franchise. And it has a 7.1 out of 10. It was actually a little bit lower, but you get what I'm saying, okay? And for myself, I am not the biggest Star Wars fan in terms of, I'm not a uber geek on it, but I love Star Wars, and there are billions of other people who do. And I hope that, you know, after this box off bombing, which I feel it is a disappointment and a bomb, I hope that this sends a strong message to everybody at Lucasfilm. Just go back to making a great movie, man. You know, make a great story with great characters. Listen to your fans, and all you have to do is just look at Marvel. Look at what Kevin Feige and crew are doing. That's how you do it. You do it right, you know, and they keep it very simple. Even though everything around is complex, they focus on great story, great characters. They take fan input and they deliver, okay? And this is a huge stark, you know, difference between what happened with Infinity Wars. You know, look, Marvel is not stopping. And, you know, people talking about getting tired of comic book movies. I'm tired of comic book movies, but at the end of the day, there's still good stories and good characters, and people come back to it, okay? So there's the proof right there. And so Rose is saying, I'm getting tired of Marvel movies, blah, blah, blah. I like Rogue One and Last Jedi. Yeah, Rose, I got tired of them too. But a lot of people still spend tons of money. And like I said, I think the Marvel movies, they're managed better. And overall, they are better movies and better characters, in my opinion. That's why they're still making tons and tons of money. God is saying Godzilla versus Mothra. Now, that's a movie to watch more so than any modern sci-fi. You know, Gaza, you know, there's going to be a King Kong versus Godzilla. You know, that's what they're setting it up as. So we might be seeing that sooner than later. And I think that last video game adaptation of Rampage, that's probably the closest thing to Godzilla versus Mothra at that point. Lance is saying Aliens versus Predator versus Jason versus Godzilla versus Captain Kirk. I'd pay to see that. Yeah, but what about Freddy Krueger, Lance? That one too. God's saying Aliens, not Covenant, just joking. Yeah, God's, oh man, you know what? I'm so glad y'all brought those up. Like, man, Aliens, Predator, man, those just all went to crap, man. Just bad. You know, even I went back and watched Prometheus, and now I look back at it, it really wasn't that good. You know, I thought it was good, but it's not. You know, it's okay. I just can't watch it too many times. God, Rose is saying Star Trek got boring. Star Trek Discovery series was okay, but it's not that great. Star Trek Next Generation had better stories than Star Trek Discovery. Oh wow, Rose, that's interesting. I was thinking about that Star Trek Discovery series. I wasn't sure if it was any good, because I myself, I like the original Star Wars. I also like the Next Generation. Deep Space Nine, it was okay for me. I wasn't a huge fan of that. And Star Trek has been going down, even though J.J. Abrams, he did a great job with the reboot of the movie. But, you know, I don't think it was as good as it was before. You know, it did kind of get boring. Okay, Carlos is saying Tremors 1990, the best film. Oh yeah, Tremors was funny. You know, Carlos, there's actually a sequel, two new sequels to Tremors. I can't remember the title one. Kevin Bacon is back, but then there's a one produced by Netflix as well. So yeah, I did enjoy the first Tremors. That was funny. God's saying Alien, Blade Runner, Alien, Blade Runner, Predator. Yeah, Blade Runner 2049. I will say that was a good movie. A lot of people praised it, but still not as good as the original Blade Runner. That's still my favorite. And so yeah, so that's it for this episode. I just wanted to do a rant. Well, I did two things. One, I wanted to praise Bloodstain, Curse of the Moon, which I don't have on the screen here anymore. I wanted to praise that for sure. And then secondly, I just want to rant on Solo, and how, you know what, I'm glad it's going to tank. Hopefully we'll get better Star Wars movies in the future. Okay, and so if you had any thoughts on anything that I talked about today, whether it's Amazon Alexa, GDPR, the Linux Foundation growing, or Bloodstein, Curse of the Moon, or Solo, be sure to leave all of that in the comments area below. And as always, if you did get value out of these videos, be sure to subscribe. And before I go, let me thank everybody who came on the show. Okay, so first I want to thank Gaza, Rose, Carlos Henrique, and Lance, of course, my regulars, thank you so much for joining. And I also want to thank all of you who are actually watching the show right now, or anybody who watches on future, maybe watch this later. Okay, so thank you so much. Now, if you did want to support my channel further, you can do that. You can do that at patreon.com/geekoutdoors. And we'll see you on another live episode.